When creating Odd Man Out Season 1 back in 2013, I was mostly doing it as a fun little experiment. I had a general idea of where I would eventually take the series, but I had no clue how well liked it would become by the end of the first season. The outcry for Season 2 was the largest demand for a sequel I've ever had. So when it came to making Season 2, I knew I had to capitalize on what made the first season great and expand upon it, while reducing its flaws and mistakes. The overall goal was to make a bigger, better, and funnier season, and I think the team really succeeded on this one. Season 2 is by far my biggest undertaking yet, and the amount of improved work in it really shows, from writing to editing to acting, just everything in general. Writing started in early 2014, where I got the first 7 episodes fully written, but burnt myself out on it pretty quickly and shelved it, taking on Spartan's Generation and Lifebringer instead. Once they were finished by mid-2016, I dusted off the Season 2 scripts and picked up where I left off. Very little changed over the course of the writing process. I knew that the first half of the season would consist of the introduction of Seth, bringing Tyler back and fighting off Butler, while the second half would have the surprise introduction of the Necromancer and the group being held captive in his lair until the end of the season. I dreaded making most of this season. I knew it would be a lot of standing around talking, especially in the second half. I picked this model on purpose, the model of having a lot of character-driven dialogue punctuated by sporadic action, because it really highlights the important moments of the characters and doesn't wear you out on the action. When your action scenes are spaced out but intense, it can really improve the adrenaline rush you get watching it because it's not overdone. Each episode builds up to the big fight scene or chase scene, and the payoff is really, really good. But, let me tell you, puppeteering dialogue scenes by yourself, controlling 8 controllers on your own, making characters nod up and down for hours on end is the most painful, mind-numbing part of the process. But it is what has to be done for that payoff. The only major thing that I changed was moving the stage for episodes 7 through 10 to outside the orange base. I think that was a smart move, helped shape things up a bit, and emphasize the peril the characters were in, being separated from their safe zone and hiding from Butler. I had 5 episodes finished by Christmas 2016 and the first 10 fully written, but I wanted to get the first 10 fully completed before I released anything so I could keep the series on a mostly constant release schedule, at least up until the mid-season special, which worked. I just thought I'd allotted myself enough time to get the second half of the season done by the time it was supposed to be released. Unfortunately, I'd underestimated just how much work the next 10 episodes would be. But before I get into that, I want to talk about the mid-season special episode, The Virus, because it was a ton of fun to do. I love the mid-season special because it gives me an opportunity to basically not give a fuck and go all out wacky and creative. Originally, though, the episode was going to cut straight from the hijinks at the base of the real-life segment. The Halo Butt Buddies part was a spur-of-the-moment idea that I had that just happened to fit in perfectly. I love Halo Butt Buddies so much that I really wanted to throw an homage in it at some point, and this was the perfect way to do it. And of course, the live-action segment was a ton of fun to write and film. I'd never really done anything like that before. Very few times do I have an opportunity to do that sort of wacky scene, and it was a nice break from the usual stuff to do it. The time came around for the second half of Season 2 to be released, and it just wasn't done yet. Everything on that side of the season ended up being far more work than I had planned for and took a hell of a lot longer. Not to mention my free time being severely reduced by work at that point. And working on it was exhausting. I hated it, to be honest. Episode after episode of brown walls and dialogue scenes. It was like Biker on 3, but without the fun parts to shoot. That's not even just an analogy. Almost all of the sets used for the Necromancer's lair were edited and recycled from Biker on 3 because I didn't want to put time into Halo 4's aging, obsolete Forge mode to build new sets. The shooting was horrible. I got so sick of head bobbing, and the editing was worse. Matching up all that dialogue with the head bobbing was just mind-numbingly awful. Getting to the action scenes was like surfacing from a pool and taking a breath of air after sitting underwater for a week, just to have somebody push you back in after 5 minutes. Work proceeded slowly, and the due date came closer and closer, and I got more stressed and more stressed. Finally, I made the risky decision to start releasing episodes before I had them all done. Was a double-edged sword. I finally got some content out after an all-too-long hiatus, but then the pressure was really on. I managed to push myself through until episode 20, the finale was due. The day of release I had a lot of work done and I thought to myself, okay, I'll take a break, then come back and finish it up. It'll only take like 2 hours. Nope, what I thought were the finishing touches ended up being half the damn episode. I sat in that chair for 8 hours. Didn't eat, didn't get up, just edited straight through until the finale was done. It was my personal hell, and then there was 3 hours of processing. I finally uploaded the episode at 5 in the morning the next day. Missed the deadline by a few hours, but by that point, I just didn't care. I felt like Frodo after the ring was destroyed.
It's gone. It's done. Yes, Mr. Frodo. It's over now.
So yeah, but all that work was totally worth it. The season turned out exactly how I wanted and better. I feel like I hit every note successfully through the season's run, and it all came out really nicely. I'm very happy with the results. But I will do things differently in Season 3. Season 2 was Oddman Out's Goblet of Fire chapter. We've crossed the bridge from innocent, lighthearted fun with some action drama to an uncertain time where there's a lot of maturity, darkness, and morality ahead, as hinted by Flim in the finale. As he revealed, everything up until this point has been fake, a test, a game. Now the canon has been abandoned, the silly fighting over oil has been replaced by a much more dire threat. Season 3 will be on a bigger scale and have much more movement, but things will be very different than how they have been. It is the beginning of the end and the start of something greater. From here on out, the characters will find themselves growing out of their flaws and growing up in a way. And like everything I make, Oddman Out is a very character-driven series, perhaps the most so of all my productions. I've always felt that I nailed the casting so perfectly. It helps that I went through my teenage years with these guys for the most part, and I got to know them well. There's only a few exceptions. Like Mac, for example. Mac has had 4 different voice actors since the series began. Alex Volgamore had the role for the first half of Season 1 until he had to be let go. Then I stood in for 1 episode, then I cast Mason for the remainder of the series, but that was only for like 2 or 3 eps. By the time production started on Season 2, I knew Draven would be a better fit for Mac, and I wanted to cast Mason as Seth anyways. I feel that Draven best continues the voice that Alex came up with, and yet improves upon it and makes it his own. Mac is a very divisive character. I had a lot of people crying out for his death due to his betrayal, however involuntary, as well as his general assholishness. However, some fans seem to forgive him after he turned on the Necromancer and saved the group, even taking the fight to Butler with his unique superpowers, which will remain a special part of his character that no one else has. Don't get me wrong, he's still a selfish asshole, but even he will grow a bit in the future.
Playing as Mac was probably the best and hardest thing for me to do for for Chronicler's series, mostly because I've never been so used to making my voice a certain tone, especially if it required a back throat, like "Hello, gentlemen," or something like that. It was very hard to do because sometimes my voice would be off, and sometimes my voice would be on point, and sometimes my voice would be in between with being Mac. But I still tried my best and hardest. Drank a lot of water every time I woke up for the next script to record and stuff like that. And majority of the time, I actually did all the scripts in just one day, just so that way he could get all the things that he needed before the next episode came out. But playing as Mac was honestly really fun. It made my dreams come true to finally be able to play that character that I really wanted to play as. And if my younger self about 3 or 4 years ago could see me now playing the voice of Mac, I think he'd be very proud. But what can I say? Being a part of the Chronicler 177 productions has been amazing. I've met new people, met new friends like Mason. He's awesome at playing Seth. Jacob always playing the greatest. Joey in this season. All the casts were fantastic, and I enjoyed working with all of them.
Mailer's character arc this season revolved around 2 major things: relinquishing the fight against the Greens and finding his proper place on the team. He manages to do both successfully. By the finale, he not only learns to work with the Greens, but even considers them friends, and realizes he might not be the best fit for a leader, instead focusing on his fatherly role towards the others and his skills as a mechanic, which we might get to see more of in future seasons. Mailer was obviously inspired by Sarge from Red vs. Blue, which people have called me out on, and that's okay. The resemblance is on purpose. Many a Halo Machinima has had a Sarge-type character, but they fail to take the character beyond the baseline Sarge traits. I wanted to see what I could do if I started there, but took the character past that and further forward in development. And of course, I'm not done yet. We have lots of the show left to go. I will admit that a large amount of the good Sarge qualities are not wasted on Mailer. He's overly gung-ho, stubborn, and occasionally oblivious. Well, not so occasionally, but he's got a lot of other good qualities too, most notably his genuine care for his teammates. And of course, Mailer wouldn't be Mailer without Riley voicing him. Riley delivers Mailer's South States charm and indignancy without fail, and creates what is, in my opinion, one of the funniest characters in the show.
The things I like the most about playing Mailer are the fact that almost all of his lines get to have a comedic delivery, and that it lets me act in a voice that I don't use all the time and that requires practice to keep up. As for what his character's gonna do in the future, I really have no idea. I expect him to spend a little time rebuilding the mech that is now destroyed, and then he'll probably go work as an actual mechanic. But since cars don't run on oil, I don't really know what he'll do. His skill set is kind of built for build mechs and shoot things. Maybe he'll start a family. I have no idea. Thanks for tuning into the show. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next season.
One of the driving forces of the entire show is Leo's struggle to find out why he's different from everyone else. In the past, we've seen him insulted by others like Mac and Butler for being a freak, and by the end of Season 2, we see him not only come to terms with his immortality, but embracing it. In the same way, we see Leo overcome his reluctance to take charge and embrace his role as leader of the group. The appearance of the Necromancer and the secrets he revealed really rocked Leo's world, and he's starting to change. Now that he's got more of a realistic goal of finding out the truth about himself, he's more focused, more driven, but this obsession may get in the way of his relationships with the others, even Joey. Joey, who has always stuck up for Leo, even when it endangered his life. Leo and Joey have such a realistic and believable friendship, and that comes from the fact that Josh and I are such good friends in real life. That chemistry carries over, and you can see it in the show.
Odd Man Out has been a blast to do, and it's only gonna get better from here. I obviously, being one of the actors and one of Jacob's closest friends, joke's on you fuckers, I know what's happening. But I've done a lot of voice acting for Jacob in the past. It's been a lot of fun doing it. So to take, and I mean, coming from, these kind of smaller roles in the past, at least in the past couple ones that I played into, really kind of take on a much more significant role in Odd Men Out. It's been pretty damn awesome. It's really fun because it's something that keeps us together, it keeps us talking, and it's been a lot of fun. A lot of inside jokes that we make in the scripts and stuff like that. You guys might not get as much as we do, but like there's a lot of inside jokes there. And to see all the constructive criticism that the community gives to him, and not only that, but in some of the videos where he's reached out to the community and kind of given you guys updates on what's going on, to see all of that positive feedback is really, really cool. I did acting at one of the colleges I went to, and playing a very much so superficial character, in being an actor on stage, and you're the one doing the movements and everything like that, it's a complete and total different world from being behind the scenes and throwing your voice onto a character, and it's totally different. But one of the cool parts about Leo, and more specifically Leo and Joey's relationship, is it's very similar to the sarcastic, asshole-ish friendship that is between me and him. It's a very surreal friendship between the two of us, and Joey and Leo are very much so the embodiment of me and Jacob. And it is something that I will cherish for a long time, because I know that this series will keep going for a while, to put it plainly without revealing a lot.
Joey is probably my favorite character to voice act for. I get to channel so much stuff that I normally wouldn't put out in public, because I do try to be nice and polite to people for the most part. But through Joey, I can exercise my more caustic, asshole-ish nature and have a blast doing it. Joey just doesn't give a shit. Unless it comes to Leo, and then he goes into hyper-protective mode, which is something I love about him. But aside from a very buried sort of older brotherly affection for Tyler, that's kind of where his good qualities end at the moment. Joey is totally unlike the rest of the group because he has no interest in all its saving the world. He just wants to shut it all out, go back home, and do whatever he wants, rest of the world be damned. This is all rooted in a terrible childhood filled with abandonment, which we touched on a little bit this season, giving Joey a little bit of a backstory as why he's so abrasive to everyone. And that's another thing we might see expanded in Season 3. After all, everyone he cares about has just left him. I boast about how Odd Men Out is a character-driven show and how I love writing character-driven stories and making a complex, realistic, and enjoyable character arcs. And then there's Tyler. He's about as static as you can get, and it's interesting because aside from Mac, he's the only member of the group to suffer severe physical trauma. And it hasn't really changed him, aside from an increased fear of Butler. But his rigid character type is actually very important. One, because it provides a reliable source of comedy for the show, and two, story-wise, it means that he'll be sort of a constant for the others in the group to rely on, like Flim said. Tyler will do a bit of growing up between now and the end of the show, but mostly he'll stay the same, and I think that's what everybody wants anyway. Eric and I always have a blast working on Tyler, and we always have a lot of fun doing the lines and stuff. The vocoder voice he had for the first half of the show was very interesting to work on. Poor Eric about ruined his throat doing it.
I had never actually done voice work before, so I was really excited to get into this. The experience that I've had with the show have been actually rather fantastic. I enjoyed myself immensely playing Tyler and showing off what I can do with my voice. I even found at times that I spend my days even talking like Tyler just so I can stay in character. But it really produced a huge dichotomy in my entire life. Since I've never played another person before, I had to start reevaluating my life, since I had to come up with entirely new philosophies for this new character I was playing, and I examined those next to my own. I think it's a wonderful experience that everyone should go through, playing someone else, getting inside someone else's shoes to see what's comfortable and what's uncomfortable for them. I found that I was completely right in everything I was doing. There was no wrong that I could do. So I want to thank all of you all for coming out and enjoying Tyler as much as I have, and I do so hope to see you next time when we hit further seasons from now.
Corey and Muppet, of course, got substantial development this season. Their relationship was something I actually thought of around the first half of Season 1. If you watch the pilot episode for the show, you can see that originally, Corey was to be nothing more than an annoyance to Muppet, and it wouldn't be any more than that. That was going to be their entire dynamic. But then I thought, no, that's boring, that's too simple, it's been done before, a million times. And I thought, what can I do differently with these two that wouldn't totally 180 their already present representation? And I went, well, what if Muppet's primary cause of agitation with Corey was because he was frustrated about his feelings for Corey? That's something very natural, we can all relate to. When you have very strong feelings for someone, they can drive you totally crazy. And naturally, Corey would have to be totally oblivious to this, otherwise we wouldn't have a story with him. But you do see hints of it here and there in Seasons 1 or 2. As the concept for the bigger story came forth, this allowed me to explore another kind of bond for these characters, because that's what's going to hold the group together in the hard times to come, is their bonds with each other. You have the best friend bond between Joey and Leo, you have the big brother, little brother bond between Joey and Tyler, you have the parental bond with Mailer and the Oranges, and you have the romantic bond between Corey and Muppet. And the main thing I wanted to focus on was portraying their relationship as naturally as possible. A lot of shows have that character whose only defining trait, the only thing that makes them stand out from all the other characters, is that they're gay. That's lazy, that's bad writing. I approached Corey and Muppet as if they were any other relationship in any of my other productions. I don't want them to be remembered as the gay couple. I want them to be remembered for who they are. Corey, the somewhat whiny, sassy, and brave underdog, and Muppet, the sarcastic, deadpan, sniper-turned-action hero, and they have feelings for each other. Sadly, due to story events, they somewhat got the shaft this season with Muppet being absent and all, which worked out because Bryce was very, very busy during production, and it gave Austin the chance to really flesh out his role as Corey, and he did an amazing job. Austin's dedication to the series has been nothing short of outstanding. He really makes Corey believable and realistic in every sense. Bryce, too, delivers Muppet's flat humor perfectly and always manages to crack me up. Next season, we'll see a lot more of these two together, and this time they'll really be together. And that will open up new story and character development opportunities.
first, I just want to thank everybody for watching the show. I love looking at comments and seeing people enjoy everything. Corey's definitely a minor character, but from the very beginning, the thing I was really excited about was this relationship he had with Muppet. It was definitely something that Jacob, the creator of the show, and I talked about, like where he was going to go with it, and with them being gay, which I thought was just great, because you don't see that a lot, and I think it's kind of refreshing for something like that to be in Machinima like this. It's a little silly, but it's kind of sweet at the end, and I really enjoyed developing that relationship. It's funny because the guy who plays Muppet, Bryce Chavez, and I are pretty good friends, and we talk all the time. So it's just something really funny about that, and I really enjoyed doing it. And I want to thank you guys so much for all your support. Keep watching the videos. We love doing it. So thank you guys so much. Bye bye.
So Muppet is kind of interesting because at first glance he's kind of your classic sardonic, sort of witty character that gets a lot of the comedy from basically just insulting and reacting to other people, especially considering the kind of idiots that he really is surrounded with on a constant basis. But what makes him different is that if you pay a lot of attention to how he reacts to things, he tends to be the first one to freak out, and it tends to be a little understated sometimes, but he tends to have a real read on the situation, and while other people might react, with a more uncontrolled panic, he has a more consistent need to try and really, let everyone know that there's real danger or that they really need to take things seriously. Muppet's a lot of fun to voice act as because I get to explore a lot of different registers while he's almost always disappointed. He's disappointed in a lot of different ways. His life is a series of exasperated moments, and he just reacts to each terrible thing, in slightly different ways, always negatively, and with good reason. Honestly, with Muppet in the future, I'd like to see more moments of vulnerability like he had at the end of this season, of Season 2. He feeling hyper competent and honestly probably being one of the most competent members of either team. He really shouldered a lot of the burden, and when he felt he had failed, you could tell he was truly and genuinely crushed, because he's used to, in essence, carrying the less competent members on his back. He's got this kind of cold, hyper-efficient sniper feel to him, but really, at his core, I think he's a team player.
The only one who got shorted this season more than Muppet was Flim. He vanished about 3/4 into Season 1, and aside from a single line of dialogue in Season 2, Episode 5, he didn't get to speak again until the Season 2 finale. But boy, oh boy, did he have plenty to say then. And during the season, he got to ramp up the mystery factor, keeping the audience wondering who he was, what he was doing, was he good or evil? I got a lot of interesting fan theories in the comments of Season 2's episodes. Now, the truth is out. Flim is a demon, but he's on our side. The whole thing was a test, and something bigger looms on the horizon. There are still questions out there that haven't been answered, but the time for mystery is mostly over. The big battles are ahead. That being said, we will get to see a lot more of Flim in Season 3, now that he's free to work with the other characters. I gave him a hammer. He loves his hammer.
The Fist of Azazel. Do you like it?
Shane does a masterful job of playing Flim's unsettlingly cheerful version of demonic insanity, and he gets a kick out of it. But in a way, it wasn't just the season finale he got to be heard in. Since Shane is the composer of the soundtrack, he got to be in more or less the entire season, every episode. But I'll get more into that later.
I like being Flim. Flim's fun. Flim's fun. I get to tap into my inner chaos. And just let out my Joker, if you will. I feel a bit like Joker. I think that's kind of my inspiration for Flim. A little bit of Joker. And a little bit of Pinkie Pie. One of the greatest things that I like to do especially when no one's really paying attention to me, when I have time to myself. It's just be pretty bizarre. See how bizarre I can get. And I've never had like an outlet to as weird. It's kind of uncanny watching the episodes where I get really high and I become super crazy maniac that has a bunch of crazy things to say. It's like it just feels like I'm giving something pretty personal to an audience, which touches me on a really weird level. Like, I like it, but then it's also like so that's one of the best parts I like about voice acting, is it's kind of a risk to me, and that risk is exciting. And getting to do silly voices is also definitely in my forte, because I like being a bit bizarre. And yeah, being a part of the OMO crew has really been cool.
I knew that I would need something fresh going into Season 2, a new way to tell jokes to approach the situation. I settled on the outsider's perspective because after you've finished one season setting up the story and characters, what better way is there to keep the show fresh than by looking at it from the outside, taking everything you've just done with a huge grain of salt? Boom, there's Seth. He was planned to come into the show from the end of Season 1, but until production began on Season 2, I had no idea on how I was going to write him. The lisp was added in to give him some extra character. He was originally going to be very nice and pleasant, but as I kept going, he just got nastier and nastier, and who can blame him? He's not even the kind of Dr. Joe he was calling for, but he still got sucked in anyway. His peaceful life was disrupted for no reason, just because he was doing his job, and he gets shot at, yelled at, and has to deal with the group's bullshit. Of course, it's established that he's not exactly an angel to begin with. Someone actually pointed this out in the comments. Seth's emblem is a cat, yet he reveals that he actually hates cats. It's representative of how Seth is in the position of someone who is supposed to help and care, but Seth only cares about himself. And that's magnified by the fact that he gets trapped with these lunatics. It all worked out really well. We ended up with this character that, while all this crazy stuff is going on and the odd man out are 110% into it, as most story characters are, we have this one guy who is free to take a step back and look at the situation and say, "This is crazy, you're all stupid and crazy." Mason quite enjoyed this role. It really gave him a chance to cut loose and be me. Kind of like what me and Joey have going on.
Kind of the personality of Seth allows me to he really allows me to kind of take out some of the feelings you don't get to say out loud, because in the real world there's repercussions for saying certain things like that. And I don't know, just in this fake world, being able to be this sarcastic asshole character just kind of allows me to just kind of let things go. I enjoy it.
After Gracia Charles opted out of being in Spartan's generation, I knew I would have to recast Butler. Luckily, a great choice was not far away. Hugh has been a dependable friend and managed to both capture Gracia's original portrayal of Butler and put his own spin on it. This season, Butler is slightly more insane than he was because the odd men out have avoided his grasp for 2 weeks, and only gets worse over time until he totally snaps at the season finale. And he finally gets his comeuppance, beaten into the ground by a band of untrained idiots. While Leo spared his life, his reputation will never recover. His... can you call it a friendship? Camaraderie? Whatever he's got going on with Seth came out to me as I wrote these episodes and kind of surprised me, but pleasantly. It makes sense. These two characters both got kind of pulled into Flim's scheme, and they aren't part of the main group, so they don't get the benefits, they just kind of get shat on. They're the outsiders. Well, I wouldn't say they really like each other. When push comes to shove, who would you partner with? The band of maniacs who are part of some intrinsic fantasy plan that keeps fucking up your life? Or the other guy whose life is getting equally fucked up? Anyway, seeing them exit the stage together just fits.
Butler was definitely one of the funniest roles I ever got to play. I've played some comedic roles in the past, usually just for short skits and things like that, but this was the first one that I actually really got to flesh out and be a very funny character, as well as pull off a very funny French accent. And of course, I knew I wanted to make sure that it didn't sound like I was being well, I shouldn't say racist. I mean, that would be a stupid thing to say, but more just not cliche French person, because I am part French, so I made sure to do a really good accent. And in the end, it was one of the funniest roles that I ever got to do, and I'm really glad that I was able to be part of this project.
Of course, Butler was only the poster villain. This season is called the Mercenary Crisis, but we all know now that the real threat wasn't Butler. He was just the Act 1 boss. Ha! I got you all good, didn't I? Bet you didn't see the Necromancer coming. I've been waiting to unveil him for years, and I knew that the best way to do it was just to drop him in at the right time and let him go from there. Some shows struggle to pull off two villains. I think I did fine. We have Butler, who's dangerous but also kind of silly and occasionally bumbling, and he just sets the stage for the Necromancer, who is direct, straight, and frightening. He has no humor, and that's risky to do in a comedy show, but that's how it goes. You have to set up the comedy for a while because it frames the super evil dude, making him appear even more super evil due to his lack of comedy. After we meet him, everyone's world goes upside down, especially Leo's. The revelations that the Necromancer provides serve to not only shock the characters, but the audience as well. I learned the art of mystery storytelling from Lost. Give a little bit here, a little bit there, and every episode on a cliffhanger, and bam, the audience is engaged. Even now, with the Necromancer confronted and Flim revealed, there's still questions out there that need answering. But the Necromancer was more than just an answer machine. He is a symptom of how deep the odd men out are in this, and what darkness lies ahead of them. And he just turned out so damn well. I was going to have Hugh voice both Butler and the Necromancer originally, but I decided I'd rather have him focus on Butler to get the best out of Butler, and to get someone else to do Necro. I approached Deldour for this. You see, Deldour keeps doing this thing where he comes in at the last second and picks up the role of the main villain and just kills it. And saves my ass. He did the same thing with Thalashi in Spartan's Generation. He's a super talented actor, and I'm always happy to have him on the cast.
The Necromancer was an interesting role for me to play. It wasn't different in the sense that I was playing a bad guy. Because I'm very used to playing bad guys for some reason. It's very enjoyable for me, but Necromancer was a little bit more, he was different from most bad guys that I played. And I've done a lot of characters that have a short fuse and stuff like that. Quite a few of them. They're pretty fun. But Necromancer was different in the sense that he was more withdrawn. He was someone that was powerful, but he didn't have to boast it. He didn't have to do a whole lot to give off this sense of I'm in control. And I wanted to do something to represent that. That's why you can hear that mostly when he talks, he's not going to show that anger. Instead, he was more withdrawn, and that's you have to talk in a tone similar to that. And I was inspired mostly by the protagonist of, I think the show was House. I can't remember what the actor's name was, but he had a very withdrawn voice, and you could tell he was very intelligent in what he did. So I modeled how I talked based off of that character, and I think it gave off a similar sense. And the Necromancer, as you can see in the story, he is a character that's very dedicated to gaining more power for himself and manipulating people in any way he can to get that power. And I think that he did a pretty good job doing that. For the most part, he did mess up, obviously, in the story. There was a little bit of a mess up in his system. A little bit too much trust where it should not have been. And that ultimately caused him some problems at the end of this season. And I think that he's probably learned from that mistake. Regardless of what happens in the future, I know that one thing's for certain. He is looking for this chosen person. He wants to find them very badly. And whatever he knows about that one character that I can't remember the name of right now, whatever he knows about it, whether it's, he might not even know anything, but one thing's for certain,
the necromancer is a manipulative jerk. And that is something I hope stays consistent moving forward.
Even as big as Season 2 was, I can't say that everything I had planned for it made it in. There were 2 scenes cut from the season. First, a dialogue scene that was fully written, fully voiced, but never filmed, as I decided that it made its episode pointlessly long and wasn't very funny. Here is the scene in full with substituted animation in place of what was supposed to be there.
Hey, Corey.
Yeah?
Can I ask you something personal?
Sure?
Do oranges, go?
Go where?
Go.
Wait, are you talking about... Of course we do! Why wouldn't we?
Well, Mac once told me that oranges are so inhuman that they don't even possess normal body functions like eating or sleeping. I just wonder if you also don't pee.
So you're telling me you believed him when he said that?
Well, yeah, of course. He's my leader. He wouldn't lie to me.
But he spied on you for the man who kidnapped all of us! He betrayed your team!
I think you're confusing me. I don't recall anybody betraying us.
But you're locked in a cell!
Oh, are you talking about the sleepover? Why would I be mad at Mac for starting this? This is the most fun I've had in a long time.
Are you stupid, delusional, or just downright gullible?
Huh? I'm not a seagull. I'm a human. Silly orange.
That's not what gullible means! It means you'll believe anything anyone will say.
Oh, well, I'm definitely not that.
Leo is actually Santa Claus in disguise.
I knew it! That's why he's immortal! Because he has to bring presents to the good boys and girls every year! It all makes sense now! Hey, Leo! I know Christmas was just a few months ago, but do you have any extra presents? They'd be a lot more fun at the sleepover!
But, it's not a sleepover!
It's like hitting your head against a brick wall over and over again, isn't it?
How do you guys live with this idiot?
It wasn't so hard when he was in a coma.
My advice? Just stop trying to convince him that this is literally anything other than a sleepover. It's a hell of a lot easier that way.
Hey, you guys brought the facial masks, right?
Oh, of course. They're right next to the nail varnish. Just remember, we have to be lights out by midnight, young boy.
I know. Thanks, Anna.
The other scene is the original ending for episode 18, which actually had the original Muppet reveal. But I cut it and saved the reveal for episode 19 because I felt it was more impactful there. If you thought episode 18 ended a little suddenly, this is why. This scene was cut just hours before the episode aired, and when it was shown to people who previewed the episode before release.
The two-faced lying bastard can't even have the courtesy to not render his prisoner unconscious. He's the worst kind of villain.
Corey, damn it.
What? That sounds like... Muppet!
Shh! I don't have long. I just came to tell you that everything's ready. Get ready to run soon.
What? Run where? How are you here?
I'll be back soon.
Muppet, wait!
The last thing I want to talk about is Season 2's soundtrack. It really should deserve its own video in my opinion, but unfortunately I don't have time to do that. Season 2's soundtrack was composed by Shane Blair, who voices Flim. This is what I meant by he got to be in more or less the entire season. His work was there, setting a background for the entire show from episode 1. When providing direction for Shane, I told him to expand upon the original themes and feel of the soundtrack I created for Season 1. Then he worked his fantastical magic and came up with some amazing music. The Season 2 overture is a revitalized version of the Season 1 overture with a lot more oomph in it. Each of the character themes are new, and yet contain elements of the character themes from Season 1. Seriously, they're there. Go compare them. They're there. My favorite rendition of this is Butler's theme, titled Siege Mode Activated. It contains the harsh electronic core of Butler's Season 1 theme, but is much more destabilized, enraged, erratic. This reflects Butler's rapidly degenerating mental state. New additions include another favorite of mine, Lying in the Shadows, the Necromancer's theme. Compare Butler's theme to Necro's theme, and you will see a great reflection of how the two villains of the season contrast one another. Butler and his theme are angry, loud, in your face. The Necromancer and his theme are still evil sounding, but in a different way. Quieter, more restrained until the right moment, subtle but with a constant foreboding undercurrent. Like the Necromancer is always there like he has been. Parting of the Ways plays during the credits and tugs at your heartstrings as it reminds you that this is the end of an era. Our time in the canon is forever behind us. The test is over. Something darker lies ahead. The good old days are over. And of course I must mention 2 more tracks. Battle Ready Busters is the first track we hear after the season opening, and plays during the season's initial battle with Butler. It's very energetic and establishes a new theme for the season, but is still somewhat lighthearted, like the first half of the season. It is framed by the second to last track in Volume 2, The Final Confrontation, which was a huge undertaking and by far the longest track in either volume. It explodes into a darker and more serious version of Battle Ready Busters, reminding us of how much darker the show has gotten since the beginning of Season 2, and that it is finally time to finish the battle with Butler that has been boiling since Season 1. It also contains snippets of Butler's theme, fittingly, and builds up to a tense fight that ends with a beautiful piano rendition of the Battle Ready Busters theme, with just a hint of the Odd Man Out theme and bells. In the second half of the season, I started putting in certain tracks from the show Lost, just to help maintain the suspense feeling, so I didn't have to put that on Shane, but it was really just supplemental. I always wanted Shane's tracks to be center stage in the season. I consider Season 2's soundtrack to be something truly special, a testament to Shane's musical abilities, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. So, at long last, Season 2 has come and gone. Started in 2016, and here we are in 2018. Took up about a year and a half of my life. It's gonna be a minute until we see Season 3, as I'm waiting for the right time to do it. But when I do, oh man, are you guys in for one hell of a ride.